What's up, LinkedIn community? This is Adam Conrad, founder and CXO of Great Recruiters, and I am joined here today for GR Live with Candace Clow of Marvel Staffing. Candace, thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm fired up. I'm excited to talk to you because I think we share passion for people and technology and the future of staffing and modernization. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too.
Um, Good, good. Well, hey, why don't you just give a little insight, your background, and I always love to ask, because nobody grows up as a little boy or little girl and says, "I'm going to be in the staffing industry." So, tell us a little bit. How did you get into this crazy industry?
So it was actually interesting. It was back in 2015. I emphasized in human resources when I was in college. So I actually went into human resources and did some sales, had some sales opportunities. So I had HR and sales background, and I was actually looking to switch back to HR because I thought that was a better fit for me. And I had a friend in medical staffing. So it wasn't until 2015 I actually knew about medical staffing, and I thought, well, that would work well with my background with HR and sales. So it kind of just went hand in hand and ended up joining a company and fell in love with the industry. And here I am.
That's the story, right? People fall into it and they fall in love or they fall out pretty fast. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
I think my first thing I said was, I can't believe I didn't know about this industry earlier.
I
So
know. You wish that like colleges and university did more around sales and recruitment. It's such an important part of our lives as people. I'm surprised there's not more formal education around it.
we're actually looking right now at partnering with a local university and teaming up with them to actually offer credits for a class specifically around recruiting, and trying to get more new graduates more aware of this industry and how they can help. So
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that would be great. I mean, I think there's a lot of lost people out there that get degrees that maybe aren't specific, right? If you're in nursing, you go into nursing, or engineering, you go into engineering. But there's a lot of degrees out there that for people that I think just don't realize what a great industry it is. So that's awesome to hear you guys are doing that.
absolutely.
Hey, tell us a little bit about Marvel Staffing, how that got started, and I love the story here. So I just love for you to share.
Who? Well, so my spouse Kelly, he's a co-founder with me. He's a serial entrepreneur. So he had been saying for some time we should start an agency, and um, I am not an entrepreneur. That's not my kind of safety net or what I'm comfortable with. So he had a tech background, a software background. I had the sales, and we ended up selling our whole acreage out in Glenwood, Iowa. He sold one of his favorite Corvettes to this date, and we went house hunting, and we were strictly looking for houses in Omaha that had a walkout basement so we could start our business there, and be as frugal as possible. And so by November of 2019, we were off to the races. And the cool thing too about being a woman through all that process is I was actually pregnant, and I had Charlie, my youngest daughter, and she was 8 months as we were starting Marvel with my son. So a lot of barriers there as a female too, where you're trying to balance and move and start a business, and you have two little ones at home.
I, I mean, how do you balance that? I mean, what I love when I started in this industry 22 years ago, there weren't enough females in it. And I always thought that women would be outstanding in this industry, and I've loved to see the growth of that and the diversity overall just in the last 22 years. But how do you balance that? I mean, it's a demanding industry, right? Starting a business. What did you find worked for you? Maybe for some folks out there that are thinking the same.
Well, to be honest, in that first year, we started in the division that actually tanked. So we started with therapists, which were considered non-essential. And so the balance was hard when you're starting a business, and you're the investors of that business. You don't have an outside source. It's make it or break it. So you have to learn to survive. Everything was on the line. So I think in the very first year, the beginning stages, there wasn't probably a healthy balance, because as an entrepreneur, you have to work as many hours as you need. But what we did was just set kind of some rules and boundaries of, after 6 o'clock, let's try not to talk about work, have our focal time with our children. But that first year, there were nights I'd work till midnight. I'd put the kids to bed, go back to work, because it was what we needed to do to make sure the business could succeed.
Well, kudos to you. And I think you guys, so we were talking about this and just what you guys built. And this was all around, I think, so we were talking about like what excites us. And I love the word that you use, the rehumanizing of the industry, which leads into modernization. Like, can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and what it means to Marvel?
Yeah, so rehumanizing was kind of a new, basically, core value that we wanted to add to Marvel that we just released. And it's really around understanding the trauma that all of our healthcare professionals went through with COVID. And, a lot of different agencies out there, they focus on a lot of perks, but one of the perks I think that is really big is providing needs for mental health resources, anything at the tips of their fingers or their hands, to know that the company they're working for really invests in their mental health and is there for them. The difference between what we do versus other sales when they're working with, products, is we're dealing with real human beings, and they get put in a lot of tough situations. They float from one state to the next state, one facility to the next facility, and they have to start up again every 13 weeks. And so that human element, to be there for them, I think is just so key. And it was one of the main reasons why too we wanted to start Marvel, is I just always felt so passionate about how we take care of our clients and our travelers.
That's awesome. And I think, we all learned a lot about mental wellness, over the last few years. And it's a big topic. And I do think that within that healthcare industry, my wife being a nurse, I mean, I saw the toll that it takes on everybody and on her friends. What are some of the things that you guys are doing over at Marvel that are kind of helping with that, if you don't mind sharing some of those things?
Yeah, so we've actually announced quite a few things on our social media over this last probably 3 weeks, but we partnered with another woman-owned company, Focus Therapies, here in Omaha, and we are launching at the end of this month our first seminar that is free to travelers or any clinicians that want to jump on the call. And it's with a national certified clinical counselor. And they're going to go over topics every month that we're going to have hosted for any and all healthcare professionals to join. The first topic is going to be how to deal with difficult patients. But that's just one layer that we're adding into basically our first phase of rehumanizing. The second phase is we're looking at offering private clinical counseling sessions for any of our travelers at free of cost while they're on assignment with us. Going through the EAP, when you did more research through that, it's very, very difficult at times. And just making sure, again, that from the rehumanizing aspect, that our healthcare professionals know at Marvel we truly care about their well-being, and offering those types of perks and those services to help them personally and professionally. That is how we take action to make change. I always say change. People talk about change. What are you going to do? There's all these, words with the burnout and the trauma. So our clinical liaison, Tiffany Vallada, she's been amazing at helping me really spearhead this. And we have some new things that we'll be announcing coming down the line in addition to that, but really truly focusing on the health of our travelers and what we provide to them.
And what have you seen kind of rehumanizing, it suggests that there was a dehumanization? Like, what have you seen kind of happen that you feel that this rehumanization has to happen? Was it just the industry? Was it, as we get into, technology trying to remove the human interaction? What did you see happening in the industry that you need to see that needs the change moving forward?
Well, there's probably two answers to that, right? So if we focus on just the rehumanizing for our healthcare professionals, COVID brought up a lot of trauma, a lot of burnout that they were already experiencing, and that just caused even more of that shortage. So when we look at rehumanizing for what we're doing for our travelers, it is to let them know, hey, we're here for you. You're not a number. Even at a lot of the new, the hospital systems, they're looking at new ways to bring in healthcare professionals, provide more to them, give them more assistance on the things that they need in addition. So the clients are doing that as well. So this is just something that we can do as an agency, even working with our clients and our vendors to make sure that we have good quality candidates that are taken care of in their hands. The second phase of that is when you look at the recruiter side. So everybody's all about modernizing tech, absolutely. When I first got into this industry, I thought we were way behind on the tech side of it, which we were. I think there's way more advances to tech that we can be doing a better job of, but you're never going to remove that human element and that piece of the recruiter. The reason being, even your tenured travelers now, the influencers out there that have traveled with multiple companies, they always talk about their recruiter because they have so much on their plate. So you modernize by the onboarding experience, ease of how they can start working with you, but then that human element of actually truly finding those jobs as a recruiter. Even if you have the tech, how do they know where they stand? How do they know when they're going to get an interview? How do they know when they're going to get updates? Like the recruiter has to be there for them. So there's twofold with how you focus on that with your travel healthcare professionals personally, but then how the recruiter element is still there. And I don't think any type of tech can take that away.
And where do you see tech fitting in, and where's that handoff to the recruiter? Like you mentioned kind of status updates, like where are you in the interview process? Is that where tech is helping out to make that more convenient for the traveler? And then can you talk about that a little bit?
If tech is there and it's solid and it's reliable, but tech, there's also people behind tech that have to push certain functions through to know where you stand versus a live person can get those updates a lot easier or potentially has worked with that client, knows the ins and outs. Those are the different things that if a traveler is just working with a tech and they're picking off of a board, hey, I'm interested in this job. How do they get true live updates versus a recruiter just picking up the phone and giving them updates at, a moment's notice? So tech is there. There's a lot that is going on with tech, but this industry is so big and there's so many needs. There's not one source of tech that is taking care of every single traveler to be able to view every single job that's available for them and where they're at in the process.
Right. And talk a little bit about, the recruiter brand. I think back to myself, the job boards came out and recruiters were going to get replaced with job boards. And that might have been before your time that happened. We had file folders, and then the job boards came out. They're like, oh, it's going to take away the recruiter. And then you had, LinkedIn, that's going to take away the recruiter. And you have some of these big job boards that started building their own recruitment kind of pieces. But it seems like the recruiter continues to survive and thrive. And one of the things you mentioned is that recruiter brand. Can you talk about your perspective and like, what does that mean for a recruiter and their brand? Because there's some companies that are like, well, our brand is our company. And I think we share that, like your company brand is your people. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on the recruiter brand in this modern era?
Yes, absolutely. I think, yeah, like you nailed it. It's always been, is the recruiter going to get replaced? And I just don't feel like that is ever going to happen because even now, when you look at any industry you're working in, you're branding yourself, your reputation with social media and everything that out there is very well known. So no matter what agency you're working for, yes, you're working a part of Marvel, but here's our expectations. These are our core values. We want to operate within these, but you are your own brand. So something like, for instance, like Great Recruiters, giving travelers that voice to review you and give you that feedback. A good recruiter should always be open to that. That was one thing I learned was, hey, if I'm getting negative feedback, I got to understand why. I need to be vulnerable. I can't get defensive. I have to hear what, feedback they're giving me in order to give the best customer service possible. So I was very pro recruiters giving reviews, or the healthcare professionals giving reviews on the recruiters, because that is you, that's your brand. And your star or your rating is going to get out there. And if you start off by setting a bad brand for your name, it's going to be very hard to make it in this industry. And what I think has been probably the most pivotal moment too for our healthcare professionals is, early 2000, they didn't have these social media platforms to truly actually advocate for themselves or discover what companies to work for, and it just kept expanding and expanding from there. So giving the travelers that voice to review their recruiters is absolutely crucial. You should always be giving those travelers that voice.
And as you guys went live beginning of this year, I mean, what has been that impact? I mean, that feedback loop. What have you seen as far as you said? You know, when you change, people can talk about change, but change is really action, is behaviors. What have you seen as the impact that that's had for Marvel, and kind of how it fits into your vision of that rehumanization and the personal brand?
Well, I mean, for example, I just had an old traveler reach out to me today, offering, help him at a clinic he's working at, just for jobs because of his experience with me. And he felt he had that trust there. I mean, it's never ending. So when you're in a position where you're starting and launching a new company, we just preach to our recruiters and our client managers, your customer service is key. Taking good care of your clients. They have enough on their plates going on, our vendors, our clients, you name it. We're there to help them solve a problem. So when you really look at it from that direction, and that's really what we focus on, I think that's when you make that change and that impact. And then you provide those like additional, right, the action items behind it with the perks of, providing a national certified counselor available to go over hot topics, or have our healthcare professionals bring in topics that they want to discuss together. Really providing that voice. You've seen transition year after year after year, and especially after COVID, a whole new light was brought to the healthcare field.
Yeah.
And I think it was very significant for us to see because, culturally, we didn't healthcare, you just don't think about it. You don't think about how much they go through. Even CNAs, I've worked with CNAs, and through COVID, they were working 80, 90 hours. It's just, we forgot about that. And COVID really brought that to light. So
Sure.
it's been great to see that transition of taking care of our people.
And how are you helping, great recruiters? Thank you. I mean, it was built for that, right? I mean, I think that what I saw is everybody sets the expectation. We're going to treat you this well. Everybody's website says that, but how do you really prove it? How do you really put the action behind making sure that it happens? And when you have that catalyst in there, that everybody knows you have an opportunity to be reviewed, I think people naturally, we're in this industry because we want to help, and sometimes we need that little reminder on our worst day that, like, okay, this is another person. This is a mom, sister, daughter, whatever it is on the other end. They're looking for help, and to be that resource. So it becomes that catalyst to make sure that you're doing what it says on the tin. One of my favorite quotes from a client of ours, Matt Dickens, he's like, when you say you're going to do it, how do you prove that you're doing it? And so with that, what else are you doing to help drive that brand in the marketplace for the recruiters?
So in addition to Great Recruiters, I mean, we're very big on reviews, pushing that out there for our healthcare professionals. Internally, we're building out new processes too, where our travelers can give reviews on us from the start to the finish of the process and their experience. And we can make sure that that feedback's coming to our team, because it's not just our recruiter. There's a lot that our support does from the onboarding perspective too. There's a customer service aspect of that. So in order to make sure that you're following through with action, it's making sure you have processes where you're getting those reviews, so you're getting those feedback forms. and making sure and ensuring, like, if somebody did have a bad experience, are we picking up the phone to call them? Is a manager picking up the phone to call them? Is it me picking up the phone to call them because, it got escalated to me potentially? Absolutely. But that's how you set yourself apart from any other competitors out there, is your customer service.
Yeah. From a traveler perspective, what are the biggest pain points that you see that they experience when working? 'Cause like you said, the industry's huge. Just in the last 2 years, the number of, including Marvel, all the healthcare staffing firms that are popping up, they saw the opportunity, they saw what was going on. What has that created as far as like issues for the travelers? What are the biggest problems that they're facing out there as they're looking for their new assignments or engaging with firms?
Sorry, I had to get a drink. Trust. It is trust. Like, the experience for them, I mean, obviously, like, their experience onboarding, I mean, compliance, let alone benefits, all of those switches from one thing to the next. That's where tech really comes in to make sure that it is a smooth process. We're still building out a lot on our end with that. But you have to have that follow through with them, and that trust with them. We are different. I am very different with how we coach and we train here. Back in the day, and no offense to any of the industries, right? You sell based on how you can sell. Well, I think that you sell based on your character and your integrity, and, understanding, making sure you're explaining to the travelers, hey, how am I affected? How do I get paid? You working with me, what does that look like? Being open and completely transparent so they understand the cost of doing business with you as well. And that is something you should never hide. So I was always passionate, once I learned more about the industry, about that complete transparency and building that trust. Once you've built that solid foundation with them, that's where you earn that retention and that trust, and they want to work with you again. And they trust you to have your eyes on other jobs that they're not seeing, and be kind of their eyes and ears for what's available and what's out there for them. But you got to earn that trust with your professionals.
And do you think, from a traveler perspective, that they're looking for jobs, like they want to apply to a bunch of jobs, or would they rather call Candace, right? You mentioned somebody you had helped in the past. They want to call Candace. They trust you. They know you. Do you see the role of that recruiter kind of moving from getting a bunch of apps applies online to really becoming an advisor and building up their own networks?
I think that through COVID, it did, with the amount of needs that skyrocketed with certain specialties. It became a bit more transactional because there were so many options on their plate. So it was no fault of the recruiter or the healthcare professional. It was just the market that we were in. Now, with it shifting back, that's where that trust is really truly going to come back into play, because the jobs minimized more, right? The market shifted a little bit, rates shifted back to normalization. But that's where that trust comes in too, where they can rely on a recruiter that they've worked with to be able to help them understand and guide them through the market shifts. If you started out traveling right now, right at the beginning of COVID, it was significantly different then versus pre-COVID when I was recruiting. So, you just have to be able to be transparent and navigate that market and those shifts, and be able to work with your professionals on helping them understand and see what we're seeing on our end.
And can you share a little bit about, you mentioned, the technology side of this? Like, what are some things that you're looking at? If it's not sharing any secret sauce out there,
No.
right? I get that. But what is Marvel doing to kind of really bring in the technology, and where do you see that helping not just the recruiters, but operationally for the business?
I mean, obviously, like, the transparency of what jobs we have available. Not to be one of those agencies that just is posting jobs just to get applications. So making sure that there's transparency there. I think their onboarding process, from when they apply to when they go through credentialing, and making that as smooth as possible, is always something that we're looking to continuously modernize through tech. In 3 years, we've done a lot with our tech stack, in comparison to probably a lot of other startups in our our situation. So right now we're just on the, I guess, the brink of modernizing even more of that process with our travelers. So it's very streamlined.
And what do you hear back from them on that process as you're making those changes and you measure the what is the feeling that they have as they kind of are finding that intersection between the human side and the technology side?
Well, one, a recruiter is going to take my travelers, for instance. I said, send me all your things. I'll format your resume. I'll make sure everything looks pretty. So you're basically selling them, right, to your clients and making sure they're qualified. So there's a mutual respect there too, but taking that off their hands, like, that is truly where the recruiter comes in. I never wanted to make my travelers have to format and redo their resumes after every single assignment. That's where that comes into play. Is the traveler is there to focus on the job at hand, and that's the patients and the client and taking care of their responsibilities there, which is a full-time gig, right? So anything that we can do as recruiters to take care of them, to keep them, their whole profile up to date and up to speed. Even if they did work with another agency, but they know after working with us, they have their whole profile ready to go, even for someone else, that helps them at the end of the day. So that is where a recruiter does really do truly come in and make sure that they're an advocate for them as well.
That's great. And as far as one of the things that as technology gets implemented and it can become overwhelming, what have you experienced? Like, how have you implemented technology in a way that it doesn't distract from the production, from the people out there? Any secrets that you guys have learned as you're implementing? I know Kelly, having a tech background, right? Technology is really centered around it. What have you found as far as change management?
There is a lot of opportunity for change. Probably not a lot that I can go into that I think we're on the cusp of, hey, there's different ways we can do this that actually brings the industry together more as a whole. But that's really what it comes down to. It does truly amaze me that even through COVID, our tech hasn't came up with a platform that is kind of all inclusive to make sure that the travelers have everything at their fingertips, regardless of who they're working with. So that's something that is going to be evolving and ever evolving, and something that we're going to be looking at down the line with how we modernize and make that transition as smooth as possible for our healthcare professionals.
It's good. Good. Hey, I want to hit on one of your other core values, motivate. Can you talk a little bit about that core value for the organization and what it means to you?
Did you say motivate? Sorry, you cut out there.
No. Yeah, motivate. Can you talk about that core value a little bit and what it means to the culture over at Marvel?
Yeah, I mean, motivation is key. Like, you get up every morning, you have to love and be motivated to do what you do every day. So, while we're a sales organization, right? Agencies are, it's more than that. We're taking care of people, and taking care of those professionals is taking care of clients and patients and people in need. So we talk about motivate because remember what we do every day, from support to sales. We're making an impact. We're making a difference, especially right now. So when we talk about motivate, that's really coming to work and enjoying and loving what you do, being around, other professionals that are just as excited or just as caring and passionate, and looking at this industry from not just a sales perspective, but how we're operating as a whole and how we're taking care of our professionals. So, that saying, a lot of companies say it, but is this, a professional that I would want to work on me or my family member? And it's just amazing. Like, until you get into this industry, you just don't realize like how big healthcare is, the impact that it makes. And we took it for granted.
Yeah, and I'd like to end on this. We're coming up on time, but I wanted to hit on this because we talked about rehumanization. We talked a lot about the traveler, what you're doing to help them in their mental well-being, which is all awesome stuff. And then I go back to recruiting is a really difficult job. It has high expectations. It's high energy. You're dealing with people's lives. There's stress. Talk to me a little bit about how you're applying that rehumanization to help celebrate and create a winning culture and reduce the burnout of recruiters that we hear about all the time, right? Because the stress does get to it. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing to help kind of empower and encourage them and keep a positive environment for them at Marvel?
Well, I mean, as you know, the customer service side of it with clinicians, they can work all hours, right? All shifts. You have to have those boundaries because you will have burnout as a recruiter. But understanding, like, making sure that they have that support system here in place. So when they need to take that vacation, when they need to take that time off, that they know somebody is taking care of their professionals while they're out. Once you earn that trust with your healthcare professionals, it isn't such a burnout because they contact you at the times they know you're available, and they only reach out, after hours on emergency times where they know they really need you. So really just emphasizing on those things, on setting your boundaries, but making sure you're communicating with your professionals on your availability. You can't say you're going to be there 24/7 and then you're not. You're setting yourself up for burnout and unrealistic expectations. Although I would say in my first 6 months, I wanted to be available 24/7.
Right.
Um, but it is, and you're dealing with people and they have emotions and they have feelings, and just making sure that, especially for our recruiters, they understand there are those highs and lows, and there's really great weeks and there's really tough weeks, and making sure that you have the right leadership in place to give that support to them.
Good. Well, as we wrap up, Candace, there's like 3 things that you think are key takeaways for you that you would say to the healthcare staffing industry as a whole, like, we need to do this to make this better industry. What do you think those things are?
I think there's a lot more opportunities for us to work closer together. Agencies, clients, all of it, we're all trying to make an impact and help where we can. So, especially in Omaha, we're such a hub of staffing. I actually look at more opportunities for partnerships with other agencies with how we can work together and do better for our professionals. So that is one thing absolutely we can improve on. I think depending on your discipline, right, the compact licensure is huge. You saw through COVID all the emergency plans they had to put in place for state boards and licensing. There's a lot more improvements that we can make with that. And I think there's a lot of people really advocating for that. And then another thing too, right now, especially, is education. If you talk with any CNO right now out there for a big system, they are trying to educate that younger generation on getting into healthcare because the shortage is real. And so we need to really advocate, whether it's getting more involved with legislation, our government, what we can do within our state, our counties, like how can we band together to educate and get more candidates involved in healthcare, but then also make sure they're not burnt out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, there's probably about 3 other things that I would love to unpack with you, but we're hitting up on time. I think for me, a big word you used multiple times throughout this, probably the number one word you used was trust, right? Trust is so big. We are human beings helping other human beings, and they need to know that the person on the other end that's helping them, that they are trustworthy, and that comes through being transparent, right? Doing what you say, being transparent, and certainly getting that feedback, right? And having that open door to understand what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and where those areas are for improvement. Technology is not replacing the recruiter. I'm happy about that. I'm glad that technology is not replacing the recruiter. It should certainly enhance their ability to make more connections, make more human connections out there, and ultimately should make life easier for the traveler, right? That's the big piece where I see technology being of the help. As you said, they can get their credentials, they can take it somewhere else. I mean, that's helpful. And that leaves a lasting impression with them, whether it's with you or another firm. You're giving them something, and technology is helping that. And ultimately, your recruiters are your brand. It's the industry that we're in, and recruiters are the forefront and such a valuable role in the organization. And I know you have credentialing and our onboarding specialists, but they're the people that are at the forefront, and you only get one chance at a first impression. And
Yeah.
as you said, if you're doing a great job, you're a trusted resource, years later, people are going to continue to come back to you. And your job should get easier in my mind as a recruiter if you're fostering those relationships.
You nailed it 100%.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate it. Candace, I look forward to future conversations indeed. And I look forward to happy hour in where is that? Houston. We'll be doing a little happy hour at Healthcare Staffing Summit. But Candace, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing all the insight, and congratulations to all the success you've had so far at Marvel. And I just know that there's a lot more in store for you guys.
Thank you so much. Yes, cheers to true women-owned agencies.
Good deal. We'll end on that. Thank you so much. Have a great day, LinkedIn.